Following the release of Michael, fans were left feeling cheated when the biopic stopped cold in 1988 after the Wembley tour in London, cutting off before the darker and more controversial chapters that were supposed to follow. But now, Part 2 is in the works, and the next chapter will be out as soon as 2027.
How far along have you all gotten? Because I know you've shot some other stuff, and we've seen scenes where you're like walking with Nia and other things that weren't in the movie. So how far along have you gotten?
Well, I don't know. That's a better question for Antoine Fuqua or Graham King. But there's a lot we shot. You know, I can't even keep count of how much we shot.
And that makes sense, because the first film does not feel like a full ending. It ended in the late 1980s, during the bad era, right before the first wave of misconduct allegations that later defined so much of Jackson's public image. The final card, His Story Continues, was not just a dramatic flourish. It was a clear signal that the filmmakers left an entire chapter out of the movie, and that chapter is exactly what a sequel would likely move into.
I know there's a lot more to be told in Michael's story, and the audience will want more.
When Michael 2 arrives, the story would almost certainly shift into the 1990s, where Jackson's life became bigger, stranger, and far more controversial. Reports say there is still a huge amount of material left untouched in his later career, including the Dangerous, History, and Invincible eras, along with major music videos and performances that were never part of the first film. That means the sequel could finally step into the period where Michael stopped being just a pop star and became a global obsession. One of the most obvious moments the sequel could cover is the 1991 black or white era, when Jackson's image had become larger than the music itself. A follow-up could also move into the 1993 Super Bowl halftime performance, which some reports say was already present in an earlier version of the first film's script.
And the first Super Bowl halftime show you directed was
Michael Jackson in 1993, and that happened because in 1992, the halftime shows were not much at Super Bowl.
That would make perfect sense for Part 2, because the Super Bowl is one of the defining images of Michael Jackson at the peak of his reach, when the world was no longer just watching him perform, but watching him reshape live entertainment itself.
And the networks all said, the NFL said, we can't put fluff in a Super Bowl halftime show. We need something that's going to grab people and keep their attention. And that's when Radio City helped them book Michael Jackson.
From there, the sequel could easily move into the Dangerous World Tour, the History Tour, and the enormous stage spectacle that came with them. Those years gave Jackson some of his biggest performances, from Remember the Time to Earth Song, and they also pushed his celebrity into a new era of global scale. If the first film was about ascent, the second would be about what happens when fame stops looking like a dream and starts looking like a burden.
The only reason I am going on tour is to raise funds for the newly formed Heal the World, an international children's charity that I am spearheading to assist children and the ecology. My goal is to gross $100 million by Christmas 1993.
Huge crowds are seeing the most enormous and technologically advanced concert production in history.
Over 100 automated lights that follow them, or create patterns or light certain areas of the stage. Close to 2,000 lights altogether.
There are 172 speakers driven by 240,000 watts of power.
And that is where the tone of the sequel becomes far more complicated. Lionsgate has said there is a huge portion of Jackson's life separate and apart from the allegations that could fill another movie, but the film's legal limits still matter. The first movie had to remove the planned third act after lawyers discovered a settlement clause involving Jordan Chandler that barred his dramatization, and that is why the sequel discussion is so closely tied to the unused material left on the cutting room floor. In other words, Part 2 is not just about where the story goes, it is also about what the lawyers will allow the story to be.
Raymond Chandler's nephew was 13 years old back in 1993 when he accused Michael Jackson of molesting him. The case was settled for millions of dollars. Mr. Chandler, good morning. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
So your nephew was 13 years old. The case, as I mentioned, never went to court. It was settled. Some reports estimate that $15 million were paid to your nephew, millions more to his parents, a total perhaps as much as $25 million. Those facts fairly accurate in your opinion?
I think so, yes.
Do you think the facts of that previous case and the settlement of that previous case should be admitted into the current trial
Well, I think some of the facts should be, of course, it's up to the judge, but there was some very damaging evidence.
Reports also suggest there is already a surprising amount of footage that could be repurposed for a second movie. Fuqua has said about a third of the footage he shot for Michael could potentially roll into a sequel, and insiders have reported that the first cut of the film ran about 4 hours before it was tightened and reshot. That means Michael 2 may not start from zero. It could be built, at least in part, from the material the first film could not legally use.
The ideas from the songs I get, I've always said that I don't write my own songs because I feel I'm just a source, I'm just a tunnel, a tube through which they come. I feel somewhere in space they've all been written before. I mean, Billie Jean and Beat It and all those songs have been up there somewhere. It just came through to me. That's how I really feel. So I even though I did it, I just can't always take credit. It's like any great artist, I guess. Leonardo da Vinci, I mean, he's doing it, but it's some other higher force that's making it happen.
There is also the emotional side of the story. A sequel would almost certainly have to deal with the turbulence around Jackson's personal life in the 1990s, including his marriage to Lisa Marie Presley, his later marriage to Debbie Rowe, and the way his private life became inseparable from public fascination. Vanity Fair also notes that a follow-up could touch on the bigger arc of his later career, including the years leading up to his death in 2009 and the unfinished This Is It chapter that followed. Those are not small details. They are the kind of real-life turns that would make a sequel feel much more like a full-scale reckoning than a simple continuation.
By KTLA, apparently Michael Jackson suffered cardiac arrest this afternoon. He was rushed to UCLA Medical Center.
At 12:21 this afternoon, the Los Angeles 911 operators took a call in regards to a need for a medical emergency at the 100 block of Candlewood Drive, which is in West Los Angeles. When the paramedics got on scene, they treated the patient and then immediately transported the patient to UCLA.
We just talked to Brian Oxman. He is the family attorney for the Jackson, and he says that according to Randy Jackson, Michael Jackson's brother, Michael Jackson collapsed in his home in West Los Angeles this morning.
That Michael Jackson, 50 years old, the king of pop, has died. A very, very sad moment.
What was Michael Jackson doing in Los Angeles before he was taken to the hospital? What new information do you have for us?
Well, we do know that he's been in Los Angeles preparing to undertake this major concert event that he was scheduled to perform in London
I have to stop you for a second, AJ. CNN can now confirm from the LA coroner that Michael Jackson is dead.
That is why the idea of Michael 2 feels so different from a normal sequel announcement. This is not a superhero franchise or a generic studio follow-up. It is a second chapter in one of the most debated lives in modern music history. The first film handled the rise. The sequel would have to handle the pressure, the excess, the spectacle, and the shadow that came with it. And that is exactly why so many people are already talking about it as if it is inevitable.
I am doing well and I am strong. As you may already know, after my tour ended, I remain out of the country undergoing treatment for a dependency on pain medication. This medication was initially prescribed to see the excruciating pain that I was suffering after recent reconstructive surgery on my scalp. There have been many disgusting statements made recently concerning allegations of improper conduct on my part. These statements about me are totally false. As I have maintained from the very beginning, I am hoping for a speedy end to this horrifying experience to which I have been subjected.
So, the sequel is the next chapter that Lionsgate appears to be preparing for, a chapter that could move into the biggest songs, the biggest stages, and the biggest controversies Michael Jackson ever faced. And when the sequel does arrive, it will not just be another biopic. It will be the part of the story that the first film had to leave behind.
Do you know a person by the name of Macaulay Culkin?
What? Get your answer.
So you're going to let him answer questions about Macaulay Culkin?
Let him answer that one.
To your knowledge, were you ever accused of having sexually molested Macaulay?
That's an instruction not to answer on that one.
Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe for more deep dives like this, and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next one.